All right. So, gang, today we have Mr. Rick Walker, and we're going to go over his newest book, Nine Steps. Uh, geez, I don't have it right in front of me. It's a pretty long one. Rick, you want to take it from here on the intro of your book?
Yeah. The book's called Nine Steps to Build a Life of Meaning: How to Unlock Your Mind, Happiness, Power, and Your Enemies Demise.
Which, like I told you prior to jumping on here, I like 10 pages from finishing it. I think it's very enlightening. Um, So one of my first questions when I see a title like that though is like, how enemies demise? How many people have enemies nowadays? And then you go to read the book, and that kind of got me into reading the book. Like, who is the enemy? What are we talking about here? And you go to read the book, and you find out that you've got to pick an enemy, which leads me into one of my first questions for you, which is, who is? How do you pick an enemy?
Yeah, great question. Great question. The the pontificators and the theologians and the philosophers and the psychologists will tell you from their learned state that you have to have a vision of what do you want to happen. You have to have goals. You have to build up tactics and objectives. And I think that's fine for a lot of people, but I think for a lot of men that are sort of 25 to 45, Kevin, that we don't know what we want. We were never shown anything that we want. And so we got to figure out a way to get to start moving, even though we don't know what direction we want to go. And my one of my big thesis is that we have to pick an enemy, like you said. And how do we pick an enemy? How do we get that thing that'll be willing to drive us? And I submit for your consideration that your enemy, the best enemy, is that one thing that breaks your heart the most, that one manifest evil out in the world that you see. It may be that sex trafficking site, that pornography site that traffics minors, that doesn't respect them. It may be that the traffickers of humans. It may be certain types of drugs that are entering our country illegally that devastate family members of yours. There's some manifest evil in each of our lives. And if we don't know what we want out of our lives, the best thing to do is to pick a worthy enemy that breaks your heart. And if it's a high enough enemy, if it's an evil enough enemy, and you're right hard enough about your attack of it, you will somehow, in some way, I can't explain how this happens, you will receive divine resources more than you can fathom. And if you can cobble together the competency to go and fight that enemy, it'll revolutionize your life if you haven't seen an ounce of meaning yet. And that's one way. That's step one of how to get some meaning in our life is pick a worthy enemy. That's how you do. You look for the manifest evil that you see around you, and you just go attack it.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense because I was gonna say when you first started giving your answer there, the first thing that came to mind was and I'm drawing a blank on his name. I feel like his name was Tim. It was the guy who was responsible for the what is it, The Sound of Silence, the movie that came out through Angel Studios like last year, the year before.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The
um,
the actor Jim Caviezel.
the one that Jim Caviezel played, correct? Yeah, the
Okay.
real life guy. I've watched him be interviewed by, like Candace Owens when she was with the Daily Wire and stuff like that. And just the fact that his message and what he was doing spoke to me, and I'm sure millions of other people out there that saw his podcast. And to me, that's the easiest way. If you can pick an evil, an enemy that calls out to the most amount of people as well. Like I guess if you pick a weaker enemy, I guess you're not going to get as much moral support from those around you. That's
Yeah,
what I'll say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a couple of, I call them kind of protected classes within the Judeo-Christian tradition. Is one is orphans, so children that can't defend themselves, they don't have anyone to take care of them. And
Sure.
the other one is widows. Older lady that aren't married. They maybe they've got some kids, but the kids aren't taken proper care of. And so these are sort of two protected classes. And I believe that if you can come to the defense of one or both of those classes in your objective fight against evil, like in that movie, you just you get a special type of energy, and you have more people that are wanting to come to your aid and help you. And I think there's more of a sort of reward for that work, for doing that. And so I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the greatest possible evil, to the most vulnerable within our society. And if you can pair those two things up, then you've got some hope to be able to move. And once you move, you'll be able to perhaps glimpse a vision. It might come in weeks, it might come years later. You can get a vision of what's possible for your life.
Sure. Of course. No, that's now there is so throughout the book, this is actually probably not an important question, but like throughout the book, you mentioned like I'm speaking to you as if um, not as a religious man, but as and then you reference, but throughout the entire book you reference Christ a lot, and then you say, hey, as Christ was not a religious man. If I think I'm quoting that right, as Christ was not a religious man, but he was, but he found, you followed these. I now I'm stumbling. So,
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it was the religious that killed Christ.
right,
If you go back and you read the New Testament, it's always the religious people that Christ is fighting against. They're
right,
always the enemy. And so I think, a lot of us start to think that, we have to go with to find our religion. Well, finding our religion is the same thing that sort of killed the epitome of all the religions, the most perfect man that ever existed. If you
right,
sort of follow it from a philosophical standpoint, not even look at the religious, but look at the philosophical standpoint. Um, and so I think that's what it is. So we have to sort of get our minds extracted from the idea that in order to sort of get our lives in order, we have to follow a religion. It's more following a way. So we're not following people, we're following the highest possible person or master or objective that we can get our heads around. And for a lot of us that have sort of fallen that out from not from a religious standpoint, but from a psychological and also a philosophical standpoint, they all sort of point to the same man.
right. I was gonna say because you point that out in the book too. What was it? Is it step two? You must find yourself a master.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Boom!
yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So if you find yourself a master, that's you're speaking to people, assumedly men from 25 to 45, and I don't. You're not going to find too many 25-year-olds that want to serve somebody else, and I think that's a tough concept. Step two is going to be a tough one to break into that industry.
Yes, yeah. The idea that we want to serve ourselves is a common. I would see it as a misconception. I think we all assume that other people that we see around are sort of self-serving. The problem with that, and this is my argument, is that we don't necessarily want to serve ourselves. What we want to do is we want to do the Ricky Bobby thing. We want to pray to the God that we would like to have. I want to pray to a baby Jesus or the Jesus wearing angel's wing and singing lead for Leonard Skinner. I want to believe in the God that would never let anything bad like that happen to me. A God, if God really existed, this priest would not have done that. We start inventing these gods that we would like to exist. Now, some of us don't articulate it that way. Some of us live our lives in a way that if there was something really higher and something more supernatural beyond nature, that then we would expect conditions to be a certain way, right? We're inventing the conditions that if we were God, that's how we would invent reality. We,
Right.
we, we do those two different ways. The problem is if we don't pick a mass to serve, the other half of that rule is one will be thrust upon you. Pick a
Sure.
master or one will be thrust upon you. And you will thrust it upon yourself by inventing your own God to serve. And the reason we do that is we're looking for an excuse. We're looking for someone else to blame. That if we set up this fictional God, this God that would have created reality this way without any pain, without any cancers for kids, a God that we invent on our own, we can then blame that God when things don't go right, and we don't have to take the blame ourselves because we're weak. It's worse than we expected. We
Right.
expected it that we would be able to set up ourselves as gods, and that would be sort of the counterpoint to the picking the master. But it's even weaker than that. We have to invent our own God, invent our own reality that a God of our own invention would create, and we blame that person because we're too weak to accept the responsibility ourselves.
Right. And we subjugate our agency to
Bingo,
something else. Right,
bingo.
that and
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense. So I struggle with this all the time, right? That theory that you can't do a good thing because it's selfish, right? Does it make you feel good that you just did a good thing? And think you talk about that in your step 6 or 7, where you discuss like donating the things that you own, but you almost want to do it anonymously so that people don't know it's you, because and then it takes away that self gratification. Like you get the gratification, sure, but then other people don't know that it was you. So at least you try to pull yourself back from the selfishness of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That step is concerning the idea that nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. That's a line from Lewis. I'll
Okay,
repeat that again. I'll repeat that again
sure.
because there's someone that's going to want to memorize that and quote it back to somebody else. Um, Nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours. It's the same story of every seed that's ever become a tree to give shade and fruit. It's the same story of every man that's ever made an investment with an entrepreneur to hope to outperform inflation, right? If he kept the money for himself, his all of his money would get eaten away by inflation. But he's got to invest. He's got to give it away for a time to other people to grow. This is the same story where men, the only way that we're going to ever build any confidence in our work and what we love is to give it away. We have to give it away in practice to people that are least deserving. The only way that we're not going to become selfish, like you talked about, is to give it away. Because whenever we give away the blessings that we have, the money, the talent, the home that we live in, we allow other people to come in and we welcome them as great neighbors. Whenever we give that away, we prove to ourselves that A, we don't need the money, and B, we prove to others that there's someone out there that actually cares for them, that wants to take care of them, and you model that hospitality, you monitor that generosity out in the world. And if you can figure out a way, like you said, of doing that anonymously, you remove the ability for any gratitude to come back your way. And there's some good mechanisms for doing that, but you remove that benefit. If you can do something entirely for someone else's benefit and not for your own benefit, and it's something that happens to hurt you, it removes resources from your pocket. You begin to take part in the divine experience of living as if you were God with infinite resources. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that whatever you get back. It's also called the law of reciprocity as well.
Okay.
It comes in a number of different
I
forms.
was
Yeah,
going to say, I've heard the story before, and I'm not much of a religious guy, so that's where I falter on some of the scripture and stuff. But I know that what is it? You give a man 10 shekels, is that what it is? And it comes back at 500 or something like that. And it was an unintended.
yeah,
You didn't do it for the return on the charity, but it does come back full circle.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's right. That's right. Well, it's also the pathway to love, right? If you never give your life to someone else, I saw one of the podcasts where I think you had your son with you on your lap. If you never give your life away to somebody else, you're never really going to have a life
right,
like that. That's
yeah.
the nature of an all-encompassing love, like a love worth living for. Is that you got to give your life in order to actually live one.
Right. No, for sure. That's and that falls into part of it. Some people say, "Well, you're selfish because and that's the way of the world nowadays. Everybody wants to. Well, if you go out in the world and you're capitalist, like you're damn near crucified, because it's like, well, you're out there just making money for other people or for yourself, and it's like, well, yeah, but charity starts at home. So first, I'm doing this for my wife and my sons and my daughters, right? So I want to make sure that they're taken care of, and I want to do all these other things. And it's like, yeah, is it selfish for me to buy some beer on a Friday night after a long week of work? Well, yeah, it is a little selfish, but you know what? To each their own, right? But then
Yeah,
the other side of it is that like majority of my paycheck goes to keeping my businesses afloat, keeping my ventures afloat because they are the spigot that sustains my family. And
yeah,
that's the least selfishness part of it is that it's for my family. Yes, it's my family. Yes, that is a little selfish, right? It's not your family, but it's still like it's somebody else, right? It's a master to serve. It's the how can you give your life off,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. I mean, if you can't take care of the people within your walls, how are you ever going to take care of the people outside your walls?
right.
And so, yeah, I think that's right, 100%.
So yeah, and and I've noticed that as my businesses have been getting stronger, I try to do these little things for customers, and you know what I mean, people that seem to be a little bit like less fortunate, right? And that's
Yeah,
and I didn't put it into actual practice. Like well, I guess I did put it into practice. I put it into practice just unintentionally. Just it felt right, so I just do it.
yeah, yeah. That's the way it works because the more we can get our eyes off of ourselves, the better we're going to be off.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
And so I guess one of my other thoughts was, I guess, going back to that second question I had for you. Are you like you seem to have a lot of like knowledge into obviously the great, the Greek philosophy, the stuff that Alexander the Great was he the student of he was the student of Aristotle, right? He was
That's
a
right.
student of
Yes.
Aristotle who was a student of Plato, right? So that was but you seem to have a lot of like Greek background, and then you reference a lot of biblical things, and in turn C.S. Lewis, who what started as an atheist and then found Christ in towards the end of his career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
where does that put you on the spectrum? Because I notice you make a lot of those references. Do those? I don't mean to get too personal with you, but I mean, are
Yeah.
you? I know. I think the last part I left off in your book, you were the Roman Catholics say this, which I am not, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
so you're not
Yeah.
Roman
Yeah.
Catholic.
Yeah. So I am someone that aspires to be a good Christian, but I'm not a good Christian. Um, just me personally. I'm not very good at whatever I am. I think that I can. So this is my first book, and you've probably read a little bit about my biography, but like from the listeners that don't know, I grew up very poor. You see that like right off the bat. My dad not we're out of work. We're trying to hustle and make some money, and buy and
Arbitrage was a
sell
big portion of
arbitrage.
that first part of the book. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so we're trying to figure our way financially in the world. And in a decade later, I've got 400 employees. I started with zero, 400 employees. I scaled another business into 6 states, scaled a nonprofit the next decade into 50 plus countries. But in that 20-year time period, 15, 20-year time period, I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection, a lot of conversations with people that knew better than I. And realizing that there are other people out there that know that know better than you is probably half the battle.
Right.
Right. Like if you and so the more I studied, the more I read, the more I learned, the more I realized that you had all of these domains, whether it be not just religion, not even go look at Hinduism, look at Buddhism, look at Islam. You look at all those things, but then you go outside of religion, you start looking at things like physics and gravity, and you look at ancient literature, you look at philosophy, you look at psychology, and they all seem to be pointing toward the same sort of situation there. And it's the strongest possible man becoming the weakest possible man to provide the greatest possible benefit for the most undeserving people. Like that's what it all sort of boils down to. And I go back and like, hell, I was trying to invent something. I was thinking I was going to find something new by reading all these books. And I go back and it's the same story that I learned well, my parents would take me to vacation Bible school when I was 5.
Right.
It's like I can't win. I can't invent something new.
There's not.
And so,
Isn't that the saying? There's nothing new under the sun.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
exact thing that you just described, that whole like that path, actually sounds like what the job that Elon Musk just gave up. The strongest man becoming the weakest man, becoming for the most what say the last
Most
part again.
undeserving. Yeah.
The
The
most
most
undeserving
undeserving.
people, the people that are
Yeah.
trying to crucify him. Yeah,
Yes.
it's very. I'm just finding similarities there. I'm a big Elon fan as well. So,
Oh
um,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I have two Teslas.
oh
My
yeah.
wife and my daughter both drive Model X's, the one with the Falcon wing doors.
Oh
And
man.
those are the best cars ever too, because you never take them in for service. There's no oil changes. They used to make you bring it in once a year, like to check the brake pads and stuff like that. Not anymore. They said, don't worry about it. I've got one. It's 8 years old and it hasn't been in for any service or anything in like 4 years.
Yeah.
No
See, you
trips to the
can't.
gas station, nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I was telling the missus, I said that should be our next one is like the Cybertruck, and she's like, oh, she doesn't like the way they look, and I got to defer to her for the decor, right? So,
Yes.
and we have a construction company, we have a tool rental business, we have all these different ventures going on, and it's like, well, I don't like trucks, but you've got to have an Avalanche and a Ford F-350 to haul tools and equipment around. You got to
Yeah.
have the service vans. I drive a three-quarter ton the Nissan Armada because I can fit my whole family in it and I can still use it
Yep.
for work. So it's the Cybertruck would probably make sense, but I don't know what I would do about um I don't know what I do about a Tesla, like a smaller maybe that's why I told the
Yeah.
missus, I said, you know what the best thing to do is I'm gonna buy one of those Optimus bots when they release them to the general public because I can get more use out of that than I would, a vehicle that would just be my fun car. So,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 No, I think that's right. Like, it's tough to find. Like, I drive a Sprinter van for my daily driver.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, and that which is the classic work truck, right? I've got it.
Oh
I
yeah.
got some passenger seats in it as well. But the wife is not happy about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And when you drive something your wife's not happy with, you hear about it every day. So
Every
yeah,
day. Oh,
you're a
every day.
wise
That's
man.
yeah. I've been telling her we need to get one of those big Mercedes, big passenger vehicles. We'll take some of the seats out in the back, and I was like, then I can just have my podcast on the go, honey. She's like, just staring at me because like this is my hobby, and so she's not a huge fan of my hobby, but she knows that everybody's got to have their hobbies. So
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's right. That's right. Well, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
yeah. So man. So all right. So you're so from coming from humble beginnings to writing your first book. I see Dan Crenshaw. That's what caught me too. You put it on the cover. Dan Crenshaw did the forward for your book, and that's because at first I was like, "Who is Rick Walker? Why am I getting this book?" And so then you start reading it, and so and he does a pretty good job of introducing you at the beginning of your book, which I think is great. That like I said, you're a humbling guy. So I mean, even a competitor in a political race is uh, is right in your forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was your political race? I know you talk about it in the book. More lessons learned than
Yeah, yeah, a lot of lessons learned. When you put yourself out there and there's going to be a definite win or loss at the end of it, which is definitionally what a political race is. There's always an election. There's a winner. There's one winner and there's a bunch of losers.
yeah,
You learn some lessons, and you work harder than you would normally work for the most part. Um, but you also if you keep it about yourself, which is what a lot of politics is, you begin to um, ignore people that you're supposed to be loving and spending time with. And I found that that was true with my family, with my business, everything that I made it about me. And it was actually ended up being a benefit that I had actually lost. It was probably the greatest embarrassment of my life. I received a text message from with a screenshot of NBC National News,
right,
and that's how I found out that I lost. And so to lose on national news is a pretty striking thing. It's not something that's typical, but knowing that you're definitely like I am definitionally literally a loser,
right,
and trying to pick yourself back up from that, that's something that could either really break someone or it can really make you much stronger. And it broke me for a time. It broke me for a time and it hurt my marriage because my wife's thinking, hey, we're going to move to DC. She's working on the nanny. She's working on trying to find another house up there. All the polling shows that hey, we've got a good shot at this, and it just wasn't meant to be. And I think the practice of getting in there and making relationships, asking for money, asking for people to volunteer for you, I think that was actually very beneficial. I owed a lot of
mm,
favors afterwards, but
sure,
uh,
yeah,
but it was definitely beneficial. But to be the type of man who's willing to take on a public loss like that, like you're probabilistically, if you got more than one other person you're running against, you're probably going to lose. I think that helps in the end, but you don't see it while you're in the midst of it. You definitely don't see it in the devastation afterwards. It takes some time before you're able to reflect back at that and see how that grew you.
right. No, I've had my fair share of politics. I was on the local common council for 5 years. And
Yeah,
I
I saw
finally,
those meetings on your YouTube channel. Yeah,
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 yeah. I was the one. I'm big on transparency, so I
yeah,
like to have the conversation. I like to have the, you know what I mean. Let's try to bring honesty to the forefront. And it's like, what are we doing? We're just having these meetings. Well, what about people who can't attend? Why is there no public record? You're expecting the local secretary to, the administrator to sit there and hand type every single word you said. No, they're putting the gist down, so they don't get to. And there's with text, there is no tone. You don't have that like well, I've been in finance meetings where you get heated, you're screaming at somebody over public transportation, and then the next day you come back at it and it's like, we're perfectly fine. And you don't
yeah,
see that until you start recording the meetings. So they record all of the local meetings since I've left. Um, but I was the guy that would just come on and just set a camera down, a 360 camera, and just said, here, we're doing a public record. If you need it, I'm foilable. You can foil
Yeah.
anything that I have, but I'm posting it online, so you shouldn't have to get a copy.
Yes. Yeah. What was your biggest lesson from that experience?
It's never ending. One of the biggest ones that comes to mind right off the bat is it's never ending, right? Like you try to,
Yeah.
like you want to remodel your bathroom, right? Like, but nobody ever thinks about beyond that, right? Like now you're using the bathroom and 10 more years goes on and then it's time to remodel the bathroom again, right? It's like I'm there for 5 years. What did I accomplish? Well, I did this and that. And then the problem is things change, houses get older, blight comes back up in another neighborhood and the same tools, they just don't, it's a constant battle. And like you can only do it for so long. Like you could be a lifer doing it. It just wasn't. I love politics, but I'm not. I don't know. I don't know if I could just be in that seat every day. It's nice to, as you talked about with George Washington. It's nice to just kind of relinquish the throne, let somebody else have a turn at it, get some change, get some things moving. Some fresh blood. So
Yeah, yeah. I've met a lot of people that have had a lot of elected positions. I probably have, like in the last year or so, I probably have had 20 members of Congress call my cell phone or text me. And so, I've had, I've had the Secret Service has been in this room 5 times, like in this room we're sitting right now. Like I've known some really powerful people that have some really high positions. And I don't say that to brag. What I say that to say is that there's a lot of people in politics that they like the politics because they want to be able to serve others. And they also get a little bit of the pride from being the one that's actually out there serving the person on the front line, the person that people see. And I don't know that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of them, no matter whether you're at the local level or the very, very highest levels in the federal government, they don't really enjoy it for too long. But a lot of them don't have marketable skills that they could go out and have a construction company or a tool rental business to fall back on. And so they really have to stay. And if they can't stay, they're just devastated.
right, right. And actually, and that was the one thing I took with me because I stepped down from there. I still run the site. I still have my businesses, my investments, and the rental properties and all the other stuff that I'm into. But I stepped down from that position to be the local HVAC technician for the city government. And so like I took my skill set and I was like, you know what? The one thing was I think I can do better for the city, not making the decisions, handing the reins over to somebody else, and then try to fix stuff behind the scenes, save our community money, try to, you know what I mean? And at first it was, you just run into all these other issues though. You see all the other people that are like, I'm doing it almost altruistically. Yeah, they're cutting me a paycheck, but that's so that I can do this and not have to go work another job and try to volunteer doing this.
Yeah.
Um, and there's not a lot of people that work for government that have that same altruism. They don't want to do it for the same, selfless reasons. They're just, nope. The union gives me this job and I have this job and it's great and they should pay me more. And it's like, and then when they go home, it's like, oh, screw that place. That's just the place I work for, and you just get that mentality and it's like, it drives me bonkers, but I guess that's just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the problem with a lot of us that are in that situation is we think too recent. We think about next week, next year. We think about the pension in 15 years. We think about all this near-term stuff. Like we're thinking about the recent offenses, the recent use, we're reading recent books. But the further we can go back and read and study from the ancients, like we talked about earlier, the more that's going to help us to look forward to more distant futures. So if you can think, instead of thinking about next year or your pension in 15 years, you can think about your grandkids' well-being in 50 years. Well, then you begin
Right.
to be able to make a life and think about things that'll make your life more relevant because you start to live in a way that people that come after you will look back and have lessons learned. And so the more we can expand and look further in the future and further into the past, the more relevance we're going to have with our lives. But again, when we start thinking about reelection next year or reelection every 2 years, it encloses it, our vision just collapses on us.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's no, that's for sure. And you know what the other biggest weight was of that? Now that I think about it, is something that you were dealing with, right? Where you talked about like your relationship became strained. I was constantly trying to run a business. I was self-employed at the time, and I'm still giving my local municipality. There's a lot of guys that just go to the meetings, right? So they're
Yeah.
2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. And I was putting in like 20 hours a week, just taking phone calls. My wife would come into my office and I'd be on the phone with a guy who's a little wackadoo, but they're constituents. You gotta
Yeah.
answer the calls. And
Yeah.
and I'd be on the phone with him for an hour and a half every week. And it's just one of those like nobody else was taking this guy's calls. Like I was his only friend. And you have that, and there's not a lot of people that do that. And so I'm putting in that effort, but like you mentioned in your book, that takes away from my available resources, my scarce resource, which is time to spend it with my family, to spend it with my kids, which is an age old problem too, right? Like the man goes out and works and provides the bread, and you miss your kids grow up, but it's
Yeah.
like the trying to feed them is very difficult, and it's something I still struggle with. I think I've gotten better at it, but it's just, is there something you could say to, you have any like thoughts on how to overcome that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I suspect in your real life, like the life that you live day in and day out, like me, this is the way I think about my real life. That if it involves someone that's not even going to show up to my funeral, I'm not gonna sacrifice your relationship to someone that lives with my walls, right?
Right.
So I'm always going to prioritize my wife and my kids over anybody else to do that. But we have to figure out a way to play defense in the home and play offense outside the home. That's the role of the CEO, but it's also the role of the husband, the father, the provider, whatever the scenario you're in or you hope to get in. So this is a great way to think about it. Even if someone's watching that maybe hasn't even found love yet, like you're in your mid 30s, haven't found love yet. This is what a woman wants. A woman wants a man who's going to take care of her and the kids inside the home, no matter what, but then is going to be just ruthless outside the home. That's what
Right.
that's what a woman wants. And in the end, if you read the book, you'll discover that that is actually the only way that a man can live a worthy life is if he is hateful of what is evil and clean and loving and accepting and embracing and sacrificial for what is love inside the home. That's one of the ways that we're able to gain relevance. And so, trying to figure out a balance to do that is require you to make some sacrifices. And what you do not do, what you put on your do not do list, is more important than what's on your to do list. Like it's what you don't do that matters, not what you do necessarily. I mean, it's not talking to that guy. It's not going out to the bar and hanging out with those friends. It's not trying to start up this third or fourth or fifth side hustle. It's what you don't do. Put the emphasis on what you don't do for a year or two and see how well your life turns out. It's what you don't give your attention to that allows you to give your attention to what matters.
That's great advice. Yeah, because that does pose a problem for, and maybe even just being cognizant of it is still just, steps above, right? I was not cognizant of it until it was, arguably an issue, and then it's like, wow, where did the time go? I don't spend enough, and leads to a lot of
Yeah.
late night fights.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I've been there, my friend. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And well,
Um,
and I think that's also as well. Like it's you've got to. It's a vicious cycle because you have to always continually return to that you prioritize those within your walls more than you prioritize those without outside your walls. It's the same thing. I've been married for I think 23 years now, and it's the same sort of thing. I've got to reinforce that my love and my commitment, my dedication, my provision, my protection for my wife and my kids more than those outside the walls. And whenever I go and focus on those outside the walls for too long and I don't come back or I don't reinforce what's happening in my own home, that's when I start losing.
yeah, I actually did a whole bunch of I don't read books. I don't usually, because I'm always on the go. So I try to listen to them. And so it was nice that they were able to accommodate an ebook. The downside is that they encrypt the hell out of those things, so you can't put it on, like, so I'm stuck with the software that it came with, and it sounds like listening to the paperclip talk to you, like from Microsoft Word from like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's robotic. And I made it through it. And that's why I was like, you know what? I got to do this. I got to make it through this book. Um, there was a point to this. I've lost it, but so I made it through the book, and one of one of the greatest one of the greatest no that's the point was the point was because I was listening to it on an ebook, I was able to screenshot different things that I like. I would hear something and I'd pull it out, screenshot it with the highlighted words, and so I've got a whole list of them. And one of the first ones that I did was you had a list of, I think it was, if somebody was harming a child. I think it was your child. Oh, I think it was a story that you told of somebody who did something nefarious with a
Yes,
child, and
yes.
if you were the father, like, what was the quote? The quote was like, your family needs you to be loving at home and dangerous outside the home. And then you went into that story about how you would kill 1,000 men or whatever. And I think later on the book you reference back to that, that I would kill 1,000 savages for my daughters, as you named all three of them. Um,
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
a point that really needs to be driven home nowadays.
yeah, yeah. You must you must live lavishly on the extremes of love and evil. Don't send one rose when you can send 100. Don't send one bullet when you can send 100. One bullet would have got the job done, but 100 bullets is what's right. One rose may get the job done, but 100 roses to your wife is what's right. And so we've got to live lavishly on the extremes of love and evil. And if we can't figure out a way to do that, we're not going to have a story worth telling with our lives. And I think that's what you're talking about. Um, the fulfillment of love is hatred against injustice. Um, no man who doesn't hate evil, that doesn't hate injustice, can never really properly love. And this is a little bit about what that first step is about in the book. You've got to pick one worthy enemy. That one worthy enemy has to be something that really just breaks your heart and breaks the hearts and breaks the lives of those that are within your care, within your, within the walls of your home.
Sure.
Um, and a dangerous man can, a man, unless he's dangerous, can never really love, and because he'll never be able to have the love that's worth having. Like a woman needs a man that's going to fight for her. If you're not the type of man that's ever going to fight, you're just going to roll over and be a patsy. Well, hell, no one's ever going to want your love. It's not going to be
Right.
worth having. And
Right.
so I think
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, of course. No, that's and it's a thing that it falls on deaf ears with like the male species nowadays, right? Like, because we're all toxic. Remember, we're we're this violent caveman that's just over here, which is healthy. And I mean, like, even like Dr. Jordan Peterson, for example, we'll talk about that. Like, everyone has a dragon, everyone has demons, but it's your job as a man to break that demon and harness its power. And a man with a tame dragon is a force to be reckoned with. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
uh,
That's right.
yeah, and so you talk about picking a master, and I think we've talked about this. So is there is there a series of master, like, is there, like, I guess I struggle with the idea of not just, like, I've understand the idea of having to, like, have to be subservient to something, right? You have to serve a master, or one will be foisted upon you. But do you have multiple masters? I guess that does that jive? You know what I mean? Like, I'm struggling with the concept.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you can take this in building blocks, for instance. Let's say I want to become a master electrician. Well, I'm going to become a journeyman first, and I'm going to learn the trade from another master there. And um, if I want to learn how to build a construction company, I'm going to go to someone that has a successful construction company, and I'm going to intern there. I'm going to work on the sales desk. I'm going to do the other little things to learn how to be someone that's competent enough to own a construction company. And then from there, if I own a construction company, maybe I want to develop a development company. I want to own my own assets, my own real estate. I want to build my own real estate. And so I'm going to learn from people that know how to put equity together. I'm always going to someone that knows better than I. And this is the problem. This is the poison of the prideful man. Who This is the masculine man, the man who thinks that he's got it all together. Is you never are humble enough to learn, right? In order to learn something, you have to realize there's something that you don't know, right? The man that knows everything can never approach that which he doesn't, which is the unknown, because he doesn't admit that it exists. Um,
Right.
and so I have to approach what I don't know. I have to realize that thing that I don't know actually exists, and I have to be humble enough to learn from someone that knows better than I. And so whether it's me becoming the best electrician, me becoming the best owner of a construction company, me becoming a general contractor or someone that builds my own buildings. I have to kind of move up that ladder of competence and integrity to be able to learn and be able to grow. Mastery only comes from masters. That's the only way that you get mastery. And in order to have a master, you have to be mastered. Only a
Right.
servant or a slave can be mastered.
Right.
You have to willingly humble yourself. And so this, as we start at the small levels of electrician and construction company and building our own buildings and building up a portfolio of buildings, we learned the different skill sets that are necessary from people that know better than us, that have higher competency, higher integrity than us. But all of life is also the same way. That's why if I was Catholic, that's why I would go to Mass, because I want to learn from a priest who's closer to God that knows better than I do.
Right.
But I'm not gonna go to him to learn about electrician or pulling wires
So for
or
every
how.
facet of life, you have a different master, if you will.
That's right. That's right. But the thing is, certain things accrue down. So so that I so if I want to learn how to build my if I want to learn how to be a GC, I can figure out how to be an electrician, right? Because I'm already hiring people and employing people that understand those trades. The higher thing cascades down to the lower things. If I understand the higher thing, I can understand the lower things eventually. I can figure those out
Right.
um, because they're being done everywhere in whatever I'm in charge of. But and so eventually you've got to figure out what is that higher thing. Is it the priest at mass? Does he understand better how reality works and how these different laws of how human nature works better than the man that's the journeyman electrician? Probably. He doesn't understand how to run the wires, but he can figure that out because he knows how to deal with people if he's a good priest. He knows how to keep people happy. He knows how to educate people and teach people. And he also gives people the vision of something higher that's possible with their lives. If you have a
Sure.
vision of something that's higher with possible your life, then you can be able to figure out all the other things that come down. And what I say is that if you could set the highest possible vow, all the other responsibilities in your life will cascade down from that vow. The highest possible commitment that you make, maybe it's to your wife or to your kids or to your sick parents, those things will cascade and put all the rest of your life in order, or they'll banish them to other things. And so for me, I suspect that the highest possible thing to get in order um, beyond your education, beyond your job, is to realize that you go to people that are experts in that specific domain. I'm never going to go to the electrician to learn about my health, right? I don't want the electrician, journeyman electrician, to tell me I have cancer, right? That's not going to be. But people figure out how those domains work. But then
Sure.
if you could kind of figure out, is there a master of all the domains? Is there someone or something or philosophy that you could put all the other things in place where you see all the value of all the great literature, all the great physics of everyone that's gone and fought against evil, that's thought about assassinating Hitler, has come to place. Are all these things that they all kind of tie together, and there's some sort of mastery to be had there. And if you can find where that point of mastery is and focus on that, then all the other things fall into place. Like it's easier for me to go and raise capital. Like I'm developing 180,000 square feet, about 100 yards that way right now, and I got to put the capital in place. I got to hire the architects, the civil engineer, all that stuff. But it's easier for me to do that because I know what I'm going to do with that money whenever I sell the asset. Um,
Right.
because and I know that if I do that one, I can do five more at the same time. Not because I've got money to be able to do that. It's because I've got the competency, and I've got the competency for a reason. My why puts into order all my whats, and the why of your master, the master that you serve, that's the kind of the tip top of that mastery hierarchy. It's God for most people, for a lot of people, it's God, whether it's Allah or Siddhartha or whatever it might be, that God form. Um, but if you can get that in proper focus, your whys begin to take care of all the lower things, all the job and all the personal relationships, and that
Right.
begins to make some things start to click in your life.
Gotcha. That's there's just so much that you have in this book to try to wrap your head around, and So I guess back to like like you're developing real estate right now. What you mentioned that you built a business with 400 employees and you ran non-for-profits. I mean, what category were these? Were these like aid relief non-for-profits? Were you building did you go from real estate to Habitats for Humanity, building houses and kind of staying in the same category? I mean, what was the early life of Rick Walker?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was in college, my mother, who I talk about in the book, where she took a loan out to pay the first month's payment plan for me to go to the private college. That mother,
Right.
um,
Were all
she
the
loaned
what,
me.
what was it, the Jesuits?
Yeah,
The
yeah. The
Jehovah's?
Mennonites were the
The
Mennonites were
Mennonites.
going to the same school. Yeah, the Mennonites. I mean, they're basically Quakers, I think. Very,
You,
very conservative,
they're
great
yeah, they're
people.
Western Amish. Is that is that
Yeah, 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 pretty much. Pretty great people. But I was going to school with them, right? And so it was a good place to be, stayed out of trouble. But she loaned me $1,000. I don't know if she went to the bank and borrowed the $1,000. I never knew her to have $1,000 growing up because we were so kind of hand to mouth. And she loaned me $1,000 to go start the first business when I was in college. I was in school in Oklahoma City, and I lived in Corpus. That's where my parents were. It's 9 hours drive, 9 hours drive. So I started one summer, and I started going and doing maintenance at different buildings. So I would offer like banks and schools a flat fee to go do all their maintenance. So this is like light bulbs need to be replaced, air filters, cleaning, waxing the floors, power washing, all that kind of stuff. I gave them one monthly price, and it was kind of an all-you-can-eat type of thing. Like I'm going to do
right?
everything for you, flat fee. So the summer's up. I've hired my first four employees, and I've got to go back to school to finish school 9 hours away. And so I would go to classes Monday through Thursday. Thursday night, I would drive the 9 hours back to Corpus Christi. On Fridays, I would see clients. On Saturdays, I would train the staff. And then Sundays, I would drive the 9 hours back. So this is 18 hours of driving every week for a year and a half to keep the business going. On summers and breaks, I'd be able to spend a little more time down in Corpus, picking up new clients, that sort of thing. And then over the years, that grew in when I was 26. We were counting W-2s one time, and we had over 400 W-2s. I think we had 426 W-2s when we were counting them to send out, which was kind of crazy. We didn't really realize what we had. But I started that business. My dad helped me quite a bit, and then about 3 years later, I was able to hire my dad away from his employer to come and help me full time, and that's when things really got going. But we were basically just taking care of buildings because I didn't have anything. I mean, I could come up with, I had $1,000 to invest, put together a website, had email, got a cell phone, bought some vacuum cleaners, bought some light bulbs, and a power washer. And that's about all I
Yeah.
could do. And so got out there. That slowly became us being able to take care of other parts of the building. We were doing HVAC work. We began doing leasing. And then we got to be able to get in bigger buildings like high-rise office building and hospitals, very, very large hospital buildings like for the federal government. Um, and we were doing other sorts of like life safety work. It was spun off an elevator business. That was the business that is currently in 6 states. Spun that business off. And so we slowly grew it, but we didn't have really much to work with. And so we had to do the really difficult, labor intensive work first on to get to the sexy stuff, to get to the leasing and investment brokerage and the private equity. But I had to learn how to take care of these buildings early on if I was ever able to own my own buildings that I was going to take care of one day.
Sure.
And that's slowly how it progressed and it's been 25 years.
They're great. Their buildings are great training. If you own one, you learn everything about it because if you hire it out, in real estate, everyone always I always have to kind of correct landlords in the local area and say, hey, guys, what are you doing? They're like, oh, well, I've got all these rental properties. I'm gonna make a ton of money. It's like, no, you're not. Rental properties they're a long game. Um, if anything, they're more of a teacher than anything else. You learn how to work on them, you fix them, you learn the intricacies of tenants, as crazy as they can be, and then you take them as just a humbling experience, really. And they're my rental properties are essentially my retirement fund. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
They're going to be an income stream when I go to retire, and they're my non-liquid assets that I can borrow against. So that was kind of. But you see all these people on YouTube, and it's so easy. You can just get into real estate. You don't have to have a full-time job. You don't have to have much knowledge, and they make it look so sexy, and it's not. It's
Yeah. And I think one of the big a lot of people that probably are doing sort of manual types of trades like like we're involved in, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I get capital? Like how do I get money to be able to go and make investments like that? What happened for me, and this is just an example, um, and so we were taking care of these high-rise buildings, and we started taking on buildings that were owned by family offices. So wealthy families that had private staff that would manage all their investments, which include real estate. And so there was a family that we did just a really, really great job for. We leased up some buildings. We created about $15 million in value. Now we made a few $100,000 off that. They increased their property values 15 million in about 2 years. Just did a great job. And the guy came to me one time. He said, "Rick, I've got some other family offices that we invest together. We want to back you, and whatever you're investing in, we want to invest in." I'm great. I'm great. And so we went out and started buying buildings together. We put together a fund together, put together an operating business together. And that's really how things got kind of put in acceleration mode. Because I could take, for every dollar that I had, these guys would come in and they would match it 9 for 1 or 10 for 1.
right.
And so all of a sudden I was able to get scale. But how did I have access to that? It was competency. Like I had to figure out how to do my job really, really, really well. And number two, integrity. Like I had to be trustworthy. I had to be above board about everything. I had to give them free services when I wasn't happy with the quality of services. Um, I had to do a number of things. I had to be generous. I had to meet with their kids. I mean, these are older men that have kids that are struggling. You meet with the kids, go have lunch with the kids and talk to them about life, talk to them about marriage, talk about family, sort of be a big brother uncle to him, not because I was getting paid to do that, because it was the right thing to do. And so eventually your competency and integrity, they become your identity. And so that's what happened. That's how it happened for me. So I think there's an opportunity there. If you do something where you have access to where if you do a good enough job, someone wealthy will notice, don't point it out to them. Just do a really, really good job year after year after year and be high integrity. And at some point you'll have an opportunity.
That actually is something I talked to a client about this yesterday, I believe. It was just one of those things. It's like, because he brought a client to me and was like, well, he's like, I wouldn't do the job for him if you don't have all the money up front because I don't trust him. And I'm like, you don't trust your client? And it's one of those things. I was like, the one thing about me is, and I've explained this to my guys too, because they're like, how can you just go to a bank? Like some of my guys struggle going to a bank to buy their first home or whatever it is. It's like because the bank has to trust you. You have to have that working relationship. I go to a bank, the local bank doesn't even ask me for a tax return. Like I'm sure federally they were probably required to, but they haven't asked me for one in like 10 years. And it's one
Yeah.
of those like, what do you like? Because the bank knows me. They know I've never missed a payment. It's one of those you give people your word, you have that integrity. Like all the local vendors for our construction company, they know that if I were to ever go belly up, like a major credit card might not get paid, but the local vendor would. Like there is a hierarchy and they know where they sit on it. Like, yes,
Yeah.
and even when I've put deals together, it's like, hey, listen, I'm gonna buy this. If it ever goes through it goes belly up, it's 100 grand. 100 grand, I will pay you back before I die. Like it might not be
Yeah.
on the same amortization schedule, but if something bad were to happen, you would not get a notice that you're going into bankruptcy to relieve the debt because I wouldn't do that. And it's one of those, if you don't have that integrity with people, you don't go anywhere in life. You're one of those guys that's out there, shady dealing and yeah, those contractors, right? We've all seen them fly by night.
Yeah.
You give them the money and they never show up. They put a shovel on the job site so they can say they started. And I've seen that too many times finishing driveways. So,
Yeah. 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 That's right.
so, um, you got anything, Rick?
I just appreciate you having me on, Kevin. Hopefully this has been helpful. If I said one thing that was helpful to just one listener, I think that it was definitely worth it. I know there's a lot of men out there that are really struggling, and I know that that's part of the reason why they listen to your podcast. And I think I saw a week or two ago, I guess you went 9 days without posting anything, and everyone's wondering where's Kevin? Where's Kevin? Is Kevin
Yeah,
okay?
right.
But to be needed and for people to actually miss you, I think that's part of what it really means to be alive. And so I think that if, if there's people men out there that are sort of struggling, looking for a way forward, they haven't found love, they haven't found a career, they're sort of kind of confounded by what's taking place. Everyone promised them success. Where's all the success that everyone promised me? Um, I can tell you two things that person, you and me, like we're aligned because like for that man, I'm speaking directly to that man in the audience that what you most need is you need your potential to be unlocked. And what I most want is I want to rip away the comfort now enslaving that potential. So what you most need and what I most want to rip away the comfort now enslaving your potential are the same things. And so the same things, we can work in the same direction to go forward. And I know Kevin wants that for you. I know that I want that for you. And I know that there's a way out of that because there was a way out of that for me um, years ago. And I haven't forgotten where that's been. And I don't want to pretend to be a guru, but that we're just two students sitting in the same classroom taking notes of what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I just happen to be the first one to put what's worked and what hasn't worked into some pages. And I have an audiobook too for people like Kevin that want to listen. But I just appreciate you having me. Even if someone can't afford a book, reach out and I'd be happy to send you a book at no charge. I just want to be as helpful as possible for the men that are struggling, and even the women that are kind of living with underperforming men in their lives. I
That's a
want to be able to help
difficult
them.
book to hand off if you're the woman handing a book to your husband, but
Yeah.
sometimes it has to be done. I was actually on that. I was actually going to say I come across great books that I read, and I will find people that need them. Like I want to say I've handed out is it John Gray? He's the doctor that does the boy crisis. And that was a great book, and I handed it to a group of people that I knew as soon as I finished reading the book. And I have a group of people once your book gets released that I'll be handing it out to because I know that they'll greatly benefit from it. So
Well,
um,
I appreciate it, and hopefully the audiobook will be ready by then. I finished my stuff on the audiobook, and I'm waiting for the big companies to finish processing it and get it out there. They need 30 days to process an audiobook for some reason. It's
I
crazy. It's crazy.
with AI you can write a song in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
They can even duplicate your voice. I'm surprised they don't just have you say a bunch of words and then it just processes. But
They should. They should. They probably already know what I'm thinking. They probably already written the book for me.
they did, right? Yeah, there's Rick Walker's next book. AI did it. So, but I appreciate it, Rick. We're excited to see the book release. This podcast will be released the week of your book release.
Great.
So yeah. And then we'll be able to go from there. I hope to have you back on in the future
Yeah,
and
definitely.
check in with you and see how you're doing and see if we've got any more insight. Once I finish the book, I'm sure I'll have questions. So, but I've got your
Yeah.
email. So
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up conversation. That'd be good. Yeah, and the book's available everywhere, Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. Just search my name, Rick Walker. My website's rickwalker.com. So I do a
cool.
free newsletter. So if you kind of like the sort of things that we're talking about, but don't necessarily need a whole book, I'll send you an email every week or two. And it's really easy it's a 3-2-1 structure. So I'm going to give you 3 quotes. I'm going to give you 2 videos, one sort of teaching and one sort of an interview series like this. And the other thing I'm going to give you is either an essay or some hard-hitting questions, some reflective questions. And that'll be every week or two. And that's free on my website, rickwalker.com, if anyone wants to get a jump on that over the book.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome, Rick. And so everybody out there, don't forget Rick Walker's book. You can find it anywhere books are sold, right? Anywhere. We're not just gonna go with Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. We're going everywhere books are sold. And we'll catch you guys next time on Life 22.